Karen Calloway. Welcome to the Career Story Vodcast. There exists a classic hero's journey, a sort of template fiction writers use that involves a hero who goes on an adventure, learns a lesson, wins a victory with that newfound knowledge, and returns home transformed. What I've learned is that we also have a career journey. I'm interviewing people who I think have had extraordinary careers to learn about when they launched their career, what obstacles they faced, and their lessons learned. Today, I'm thrilled to have as my guest the president of the Canfield Training Group, Patty Aubery. We've all heard of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. That's probably because of Patty, who oversaw the growth of what became the publishing industry's first billion-dollar brand. She then went on to create a multi-million-dollar training company around the success principles of author Jack Canfield, expanding that live training and coaching programs to over 100 countries. She is, without question, the chief rainmaker. Patty, I first met you at a conference in 2017 where you and Jack Canfield were sharing experiences in training using the success principles. And since then, along with maintaining your lead role with the Canfield Group, you've also stepped out on your own to dedicate your time and expertise to empowering and supporting women with your best-selling book, which is now a course called Permission Granted. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, I want to go back to the beginning of your career journey. You had such a compelling vision and strategy that manifested into a global success with the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. Can you kind of paint a picture for us and take us back to where and when this career quest began?
I met Jack in 1989. And so it's been 34 years. I think we're going on 35 years. And I actually answered an ad in the paper that said secretary wanted $25,000 a year. And basically the rest is history. So I came in and he had to go to town. He traveled a lot teaching teachers all over the country and kind of left me with this office that was pretty archaic. And so I started looking at the bills and looking at what the invoices were and looking at the way their stuff was handled. And it was just very elementary. So I thought, well, if I just, cut out this guy that's writing code, I could write my own code and put in Macs and have an Apple computer. And so I basically just created a whole new network and said, hey, I'm going to take this from $50,000 a year in expenses to, I'm going to buy $25,000 of equipment, but it will be done. We'll never have to pay for it again. And he said, okay. So I did that. And then I just started kind of slowly but surely taking over the business side, which was not really his forte. And about 6 months, and I said, I want to be vice president of operations. He's like, great, make yourself some cards. And so I did. And then one day he came to the office and said, I tell these stories from stage all the time. And everybody keeps saying, are those stories in a book? And he said, and I keep saying no, but I guess we're supposed to respond to feedback because that's what we teach. Maybe we're supposed to put these stories in a book. And I said, all right, I'm in. And actually, one of the guys that was running our foundation was like, I'm out. This is crazy. If you write this warm and fuzzy book, it'll ruin your career. I'm like, do we even have a career? I mean, we were nothing. And I always tell people, I'm so glad. I was probably 25 at the time, so I had no opinion. So I went along with it. And I typed that book, probably every story 6 times. And it took us 2 years to put the book together and edit it. And then another 2 years to actually find a publisher. We didn't know you have to get a publisher before you finish a book. And got to the point where our agent came to us and said, I'm really sorry, but I can't sell the book. And so we had to go out and try to find a publisher, which we did do. Finally, it was a very small publisher out of Florida. And we had to guarantee them 20,000 copies or we had to buy them. They didn't do any advances. But we did it because we had been speaking for the last 18 months and saying, hey, if you promise to buy 5 copies, if you'll fill out this form. And it was so old school. And so we just really believed that it was going to work. And then it got published in June of 93 and hit a bestseller list in, I want to say December of 94. So we were out there for quite a while before it actually worked. And so it was 94, 89. So that's 5 long years of top ramen and a recession and all kinds of other things. So that was the beginning of an idea that we just went with and started to market it to everybody and anybody. And then one of the best things that's ever happened was Jack had this idea because our publisher called and said, hey, there's a page in the back of the book. It's blank. And Jack said, well, let's just ask people if they have a story. I would have said, leave it blank. I'm over it. And so we did that. And we started getting stories by the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And so through those stories, we started to notice what the readers were telling about, what their stories were. And so that's kind of how the whole thing started. One book at a time, marketed that for a couple years. Then we did 2 books, then we did 3. At one point, I think we were doing 12 to 18 books in a year. And I think when we sold the company in 2008, we had published 240 book titles under the Chicken Soup brand and sold 500 million copies.
Okay. And that is amazing. And I don't think people realize who you were behind that. Hopefully, if I can shout that out, like you were the brains behind all that.
I ran the business side.
Yeah.
So I was very comfortable on the business side. Jack was the upfront guy. So was Mark Victor Hansen. They were on the stages. And, but at a certain point, I did start writing some of the books as well. And that's where I had to very uncomfortably step out from behind the scenes and be more seen, which was really hard to do.
So tell me a bit more about, because I look at your career and I think as you have started to step out, when I saw you in 2017, you still, you hadn't written permission granted. So how have you, I mean, others would say, wow, how would you have done that so gracefully?
Well, it wasn't graceful. It really wasn't. I mean, the whole journey started in about 2013. I want to say 2012, 13. My mom was dying and I was at her bedside and she said to me, promise me that you will take credit for the work that you've done. You two have done this together over these last 18 years or whatever it was at the time. And you need to show up and be seen. I didn't raise a daughter to be invisible. So promise me. And so I did. And so but at the same time, I was still kind of waiting for Jack or Mark to say, hey, kid, come up on stage. And then I finally had the guts to say, I want to do some of this. I want to teach some of these things. I have a few things to say. And Jack said, I would love to have you on stage, but I just don't have time because I have so much to say. And so I started to get kind of angry and bitter. And I would say, but your audience is women and I'm a woman if you haven't noticed. So he said, well, why don't you just do a few things on your own? And so I ran a couple of women's retreats. In fact, I'm running a retreat. I'm not running it tonight. I'm hosting one for one of my students. It's her first one. And she said, this is my first and my last. And I said the same thing the first time. I called Jack in the middle of the night and said, I'm never doing this again because it's scary, and you don't really know what you're doing. But I did that. And I was still not very graceful. I was still kind of waiting for him to kind of cheer me on the way I cheered him on. And that wasn't really happening because frankly, for him, it was working quite well having me run the company. And so I finally said, you know what, I need to do more. And the pandemic hit. And so I was being sort of pressured to write the success principles for women. But I had this thing that I wanted to write permission granted because I wanted to share my own story about how hard it was to show up and speak up and be seen. Here I am, San Diego State Valley girl with a C- average, and I'm comparing myself to this Harvard genius who's charismatic, remembers everything he hears, tells great jokes. And I'm like, who wants to hear from me? And so I really just struggle with really using my voice. And it was a long, rocky road. But once I got over the hump, I realized as I sat in this space, I was in my Nashville house and I'd been gone for about 6 weeks and I was cleansing and meditating and doing all the right things. And I was so clear I needed to write permission granted first, regardless of what came next. And so I remember I had told a bunch of people I was going to do it, but I hadn't told Jack. And I knew until I did, it was still kind of a lie or it still wasn't real. And so I called him one day and I said, I need to talk to you about something. It's kind of serious. And he said, okay. I said, I've met someone. And he went, what? Who? Like freaking out, like, is she running away with some bazillionaire that has a private plane? Did she meet somebody else that's stealing her from me? Whatever it was. And so I said, well, I met myself. And he went, oh. And I said, so with your permission, I would like you to support me in writing permission granted. And he's like, oh, absolutely. What do you need? What do you need? I said, I just need you to support me the way I've supported you over the last 20 something years. And I need you to be my cheerleader. I need you to remind me that I'm good enough, that I'm smart enough. I'm not going anywhere, but I need that support. And he said, you got it. What else? I said, I don't know. I've never really asked for that much from you because I've always been supporting you. So let me go make a list and I'll come back to you. And so by the time I actually got the book out of me, I was much more graceful. And I had been running permission granted groups for a couple of years. Kind of my forte is masterminding and strategic planning because I know what it's like to start a business on a nickel and have to live on a nickel for a long, long time. And so I did that, and that went really well. And it's kind of morphed into some other things. And that's kind of how I got there. But it wasn't easy. There was a lot of nights where I thought, I am insane. Who do I think I am to do this? And, you know, whenever anybody, I always say to people, what do you think will get in your way? And almost everyone says, me, I'll get my own way. And so by having that mindset support, it's been really helpful.
And that's what I found too in my own business. If you remember to ask for support, and Jack Canfield's a big supporter, that's a nice one to ask. But if you ask for support, it is there. People do want, when you're clear on what you want, they will help you. And I love the cover of this. It says, discover how life changes when you give yourself permission. It's such a powerful message. And so everyone should get this or buy it for the women in their life. It's such powerful. I mean, I cry easily, but it did make me cry in the first page. I think it was so inspiring. So thank you so much, Patty, for sharing this journey. And I would spend hours, I think, with you just talking more about it. Well, I think that gave listeners lots to think about. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.